Reading Parshas Emor, which, by the way, happens to be my bar mitzvah parsha a few years ago. And Parshas Emor is it's actually a famous parsha because we read it a few times a year. We don't only read it now on its regular time, but the second half is read both on Sukkos and Pesach, because the second half of the parsha deals with all of the holidays, including Shabbos. The first half of the parsha mostly deals with some of the laws of the Kohanim about they're not allowed, things that they're not allowed to become tamei, that they are permitted, for example, to go to the funeral of a immediate family member, but not to anyone else, not allowed to go to the cemetery, etc., and a bunch of other laws that Kohanim, that are specific to Kohanim. And so about halfway through the parsha, switches gears and ultimately goes into the various holidays. And one of the holidays, of course, is Pesach, and the other one that comes after that is Shavuos. And Pesach and Shavuos are linked by the period that we are now in, which we call it the period of the Omer. And the Omer refers to during this time period, we are counting the days and the weeks, 49 days, 7 weeks, from the second day of Pesach all the way through to the last day before Shavuos, as 49 days, and then would be the day of Shavuot, which is, of course, the day we received the Ten Commandments on Mount Sinai, which is, for all intents and purposes, the concept of the giving of the Torah on Mount Sinai. And if we go back to where it all started on Pesach, the second day of Pesach, which is the 16th day of the month of Nisan, there was a special offering brought, and that offering was known as the Korban Omer. And what that offering did is it was an offering of barley, of the new crop. And until that time, and this law actually still applies today, one is not supposed to eat from the grain of the new crop that was grown before Pesach. And once on the 16th, once the offering was brought on the 16th of Nisan, and in our case, when we don't have an offering, when the 16th of Nisan passes, then it's permissible to eat from all of the new crop that was from the before Pesach. And we actually have that concept still today in terms of, you may have seen sometimes, you may see some kosher products that say Yashan on them, which means it's old, as in it not from the new crop, it's from a previous crop. Actually, recently this year, I noticed that there were some things, at least when we were down in Muncie, that said this was baked after Pesach, which again is letting you know this is not from it's not from then. So this korban, this offering, which is known as the Korban Omer, really had significance. And in fact, the Sefer HaChinuch tells us that the purpose of this offering was to remind us that Hashem is providing us with our sustenance. Here you have your crops, and actually the Be'er Yosef points out, similar to we bring the first fruits, right? When we make a dough, we take off a piece of challah. When we make a large dough, and it's supposed to be given to the Kohen. Nowadays we don't have that, but the idea is, when we have food, we want to recall that Hashem is the one who provides it. And the Korban Omer also reminds us of that idea that Hashem is the one who provided us and continues to provide us with our sustenance. And therefore, before we are going to partake from the new crop, we're going to bring an offering. The question, though, is asked, the name of this korban seems to be a very strange korban. It's a very strange name, because normally we have lots of different offerings, and they usually refer to the type of offering it is. The word Omer does not relate to the type of offering it is. The word Omer in and of itself is a measurement. It's a tenth of an ephah, so a certain amount. And being as it's a measurement, why is this offering referred to by the amount of grain, which is the amount of barley that you're supposed to bring with the offering? That's how much. It's an omer's worth of barley is brought for this offering. We never find any other offering where it's called by the product that is brought, whereas here, or the amount that is brought, whereas here it is. And the question is why? And Rabbi Yosef Salat was known as the Be'er Yosef. He wrote a book called the Be'er Yosef with the commentaries, and he explains as follows. He quotes this Sefer HaChinuch that we just talked about, that the the idea of the actual Omer offering itself was designed to remind us that Hashem is providing us with sustenance all the time. And he also points out that the other place where we find the word Omer in the Torah is in reference to the man. Right? When the Jewish people were in the desert and Hashem made it that there would be man every day, that they would be able to have food, right? The amount that was collected was an Omer's worth. And it was no matter how much time you spent, you could have spent all day collecting, you spent 30 seconds collecting, everybody ended up with an Omer amount, and that amount was enough to sustain every person for the day. That was enough. And then each day, of course, they had to get more. And the whole concept of the man, of course, was a lesson in faith in Hashem, that Hashem is providing sustenance, because everyone had to rely that tomorrow morning there was going to be a new round of man, because you couldn't leave it over. It didn't last from one day to the next. So the Omer amount is connected to the man, which was also a lesson, maybe the best lesson ever, in God providing for the needs of the people all the time, and that God, even now, when it's not overt miracle, God is the one who's providing, and that's really where our sustenance is coming from. And it's interesting to note that the man, when it stopped falling at the end of the 40 years in the desert, the date that it stopped falling was the 16th of Nisan. That was the end of the month. So we have a connection between this date where the Korban Omer is brought on the 16th of Nisan and the man, which was also an Omer amount. And the lesson that the two of them are teaching are both the same idea, that God is providing our sustenance, and we have to have faith and understand that that's the source of where our sustenance comes from. And during this time period, as we're counting, so we are referencing the Korban Omer as our reference. Now, one of the reasons, by the way, why we don't count from the first day of Pesach is because we don't want to mix things. The first day of Pesach was designated for the celebration of the fact that we were taken out of Egypt, and also it happened. It was part of the day when the Jewish people came out. So 49 whole days really starts from the second, and that's one of the reasons we do it. But also we have here this reference that during this time period when we're leading up to the giving of the Torah, and we're reminding ourselves of Hashem providing for us, and that we are Hashem's people. During this time, we are constantly referencing to that Korban Omer, to the word Omer, which is a constant reminder every day during this 49 period. God is the one who provides, and God is the one who sustains us. And it's just a continuous refresher to the point where by the time we are ready to receive the Torah again on Shavuot, we will have been reminded 49 days in a row that God is the one who provides, and we will be in perfect shape to be able to receive the Torah anew once again. And we will hold it there.